What's up, A-Push Nation? On this glorious November day when the Jets are primed to come to Arizona and take down Brophy's beloved Arizona Cardinals, I'm here today to talk about how to dominate the long essay question, otherwise known as the LEQ. So let's get to business with the game coming up in a few hours. The LEQ, much like NFL teams today on this Sunday afternoon, is worth 6 points, just like a touchdown. So know that when you guys are chasing these points, these precious points on the AP exam, the LEQ is worth 6 points. And I'm going to take you first through, and for humor's sake, I injected a little WWF from my era. I know it's WWE now, but a little WWF action with some of these GIFs. The LEQ, and how we're going to break it down, is to let you know really where it stands on this A-Push exam. First of all, it's part of the third section of the exam, and it's coupled with the DBQ. So by the time you get to this point in the exam, you'll already have been working for over 2 hours. But part 3 is unquestionably the most laborious of all 3 A-Push sections because you have 100 minutes to write 2 essays, 100 minutes for 2. Now, in the exams, there will be nobody to remind you when to start the LEQ, when to start the DBQ. You're on your own. Those 100 minutes have to be managed by you, nobody else. What I always recommend is for my students to start with the DBQ. The DBQ is worth more points. It's 25% of the exam score, and it's by far the most time-intensive action you'll do on the entire A-Push exam. The LEQ should be the second essay. Get that done second, because if you run out of time on the DBQ, you can always shave some time on the LEQ towards the end. And in essence, the LEQ is much less value. In fact, it's 10% less valuable than the DBQ. It's only 15% of your A-Push score, which actually makes the LEQ the least valuable of any section on the A-Push exam. So my best bet, my best recommendation for approach here is to start with the DBQ, get done with that, and then whatever time you have remaining, it should have around 30 to 35 minutes is where you tackle the LEQ. The LEQ is structured in a way that now offers students choice. In the old days, there was no choice, zero. You were on your own. Whatever they gave you, you had to respond. There are 3 options. The first would come from period or unit, whatever you and your teacher refer to, 1 through 3. So that's the earliest material, pre-Columbian societies, all the way up to the French and Indian War. The other option is going to come from period or unit 4 through 6. So you're talking Second Great Awakening, Reform era, antebellum America, up through Reconstruction. And then the final topic would be from about period 7 or unit 7 onwards to unit 9. And that could be anything from Reconstruction up to the Reagan era of the 1980s. But realize this, it is your choice. You have the option of how to dominate the LEQ. That is an empowering form of agency. So choose wisely. Pick the topic that you're most comfortable with. Best suggestion I can give you in this breakdown here. And again, just like Garrett Wilson's going to drop a handful of these today on the Cardinals, we're talking about 6 points for the LEQ. Now, I'm not even going to get into the algorithm, how it's computed for the final score. But again, the LEQ is the least valuable of everything on the exam. So don't stress too much about your LEQ. We're going to follow these simple steps and make sure you guys get off to a great start and make sure that you guys are dominating this LEQ. Now, I'm going to kind of tossle back and forth between College Board's notes on the LEQ and my own suggestions. So here's what you'll see. These are the actual instructions that you're going to get from the College Board. These are whether you do option 1, 2, or 3. It's the same idea. And in fact, they're telling you everything that you really need to broadly realize, including what I'll introduce here, the 3 C's, which is the change over time / continuity, or the compare and contrast, or the cause and effect. So we'll talk about the themes of these essays in a few moments, but that's what you're going to see when you open up to the LEQ. Now, the LEQ is really predicated on these 3 C's, and the 3 C skills are stuff that you guys should all be familiar with by now with your teachers. The first is causation. That's a breakdown of causes and effects. The second is the comparison theme of similarities and differences. And then the last one, and perhaps my favorite, is the continuity change. And that's the what stayed the same and what turned or what shifted, whatever verb you want to use there. So the structure of the essay will be guided by one of these three themes. So you're going to have to really quickly identify, based on the prompt that you're given, what is my 3C skill that I need to apply here? And from there, we'll take the 3C, and I'll show you shortly how you can integrate that into your essay to ensure that you're getting all 6 points. Speaking of the points, here's how the breakdown works. All right. And mind you, this is not the order of which I teach my students to approach the test. I'm just going to rip it right through what the College Board shows. And really, I'm not even going to go into the whole breakdown of what to do here. This is more for an overall broad structure. The what to do part, it's best left between you and your teachers out there. Perhaps they have some suggestions. Perhaps they have some guidance from their years of teaching APUSH. I'm merely just introducing the rubric. So the first 2 points you get are through the thesis, claim, argument. That's take a stance. Make sure you know exactly what you're driving the question towards. Identify your key point. Make your argument. That's the best tip on the thesis I can offer all of you, including my guys at Brophy. It is to make an argument. Take a stance. You cannot sit on the fence. You got to go one way or the other, whatever the prompt is. The second point here listed on the rubric from the College Board is contextualization. So contextualization, you'll see when I lay out my structure of the essay, I actually advise students to do that first. And the reason is I always think of contextualization like this. Contextualization is effectively like the opening of any good Star Wars episode, which really is only episodes 4, 5, and 6. I won't even commit blasphemy here to George Lucas and praise any other episodes rather than the original 4, 5, 6. But when you begin any Star Wars episode, it always begins with that long title scroll, like with the galaxy in the background, and it gives you the background before we start the story. That is your context. So when I refer to later as context is the Star Wars scroll, that's what we're talking about. You got to set your essay up with some relevant background. And I always advise students to start with what happened before the time period that you're given in the prompt. So run it back and give a nice little 2 to 3 sentence intro about what was happening in that time period. And then how does that relate to the question they're asking? That's a key point to start your essay. And then you would do your thesis. And if you can do those, you're down to 2 out of the 6 points already. The meat of the, sorry, I forgot about this. Yeah, this is effectively the argument. And for my students, the Star Wars scroll context is more or less backwards PSF. You're looking for how events before the time period shaped the event you're writing about. All right. And that's what gives us our intro paragraph. We're going to take the context and the argument and boom, there's our intro paragraph. Now, the bulk of the points, the remaining 4, are going to come on evidence and analysis. And so evidence is the ability to identify and explain 2 supporting pieces of evidence that supports your argument. It must support the argument. Notice how you actually can earn up to 2 points, including and also including 1 point if you don't fulfill all requirements. And the main requirement the College Board dictates is you have to support your argument. If your evidence does not reel back and reinforce whatever your thesis argument is, you risk earning only 1 point. So to pick up the 2 points, you must back it up to your arguments, and you have to present 2 unique pieces of supporting evidence. Follow that same identify, explain tactic that you use in the essay cues, but then make sure that you're reinforcing how whatever your evidence points to support your argument, they have to be explained why it demonstrates support for the argument. If you fail to do that, you're going to only earn 1 point, even if you have 2 pieces of evidence. So that is the real key when it comes to the evidence. The analysis, how do we get the 5th and 6th point? Well, analysis are going to be 2 body paragraphs that address your 3C skills. And as I said before, most of the LEQs and DBQ, by the way, the DBQ requires very similar structure here. You have to pick your 3C skill, and then it's a little complicated, and there's a lot on this screen. So I'm going to go into this more when I talk about my structural of the essay, but realize that in order to get the 5th and 6th points, you got to focus on the 3C skills for your analysis and reading. And I'm going to go reasoning, and I'm going to go back to that in a moment. So let's talk about my LEQ approach, which might have these sort of epiphany look that John Cena has here. So I teach the LEQ approach to get those 6 points. Paragraph 1 is your intro essay. That's where you're going to lay out your Star Wars scroll, right? The context. It's going to be that opening 2 to 3 sentences revealing how something previous to the time period that we're writing about affected the time period or led up to it, right? Now, you realize you do not get the 3C skill for your context. Context is a standalone point So you can't get causation here. You got to just lay out what was going on around the time period that the prompt is requiring you to write about. And then again, think of it like that Star Wars scroll. Also in your essay intro, you've got your thesis argument. That's take a stance. I recommend that's usually 1 to 2 sentences. And again, I'm not going over writing mechanics. If you're in A-Push by now, you should have a foundation of how to write a good thesis statement. But I'm going to work with my guys individually in class. But for all of you watching out there outside of Brophy in Phoenix, right, talk to your teachers, get their opinions here. I recommend 1 to 2 sentences, though, to kickstart the party. All right. Now, paragraph number 2 is where we start going into our evidence. All right. Evidence is going to be, like I said, it has to relay back to the argument. And if it doesn't do that, you risk not getting the full 2 evidence points. Remember, in evidence, you must identify and explain. So a good topic sentence to identify the evidence before you start explaining it is always key. I don't like to give, sentence recommendations for the body paragraphs. I'd say anywhere from 2 to 5 sentences. 2 is probably even on the short side, so maybe 3 to 5. But again, it's got to relate back to your thesis and argument. Your third body paragraph essay, evidence paragraph, or your third essay paragraph should be evidence number 2. And again, it's the same thing. Identify, explain, relate to the thesis. All right. So we got 3 paragraphs down by now, and then here's where we make our money. Oh, it's going to do this again. I apologize here. I'm recording, so I'm not going to edit this. Just bear with. Here we go. All right. I got a little bit off on my animation, so bear with me as we barrel through this. I'm not going to re-record. Paragraph 4. Now here's where we get to the 3C skills. Your 3C skills, whatever the theme of the essay, and that should be directly in the prompt. You need to give a full paragraph identifying and explaining either the continuity or cause or similarity. Again, it depends on what the theme of the essay is. So you would identify, you would explain how a continuity relates back to the topic and the argument, or a cause or a similarity, whatever theme you're working with. Okay. Paragraph number 2. Now 3C paragraph number 2, which is paragraph number 5 altogether. This is where it gets complicated. All right. Now, the structure is you're still going to identify, explain, and relate back to the thesis. That doesn't change. But you have options here. So to get the second analysis point, you can do option A, which is you can switch gears and now go over, identify, explain, relate back to the thesis, a change or an effect or a difference. So you can go opposite of what you did in 3C skill paragraph number 1. So that's option A. Option B is you can actually go for a second continuity or a second cause or a second similarity. So you can run it back and go further with another example of the continuity or cause or similarity. And option C would be a second change or a second effect or a second difference. So you have opportunities to go both ways here. You can either go all in on the continuity / change, the cause / effect, the similarity / difference, or you can double up on either direction, but you won't mix and match. So you wouldn't do a cause and then a similarity, or you wouldn't do a continuity and then a difference. So it's going to stay into the same 3C skill. And that's how you would approach getting those analysis and reasoning points. And again, in order to earn the 6th point on the essay, you have to do 2. So really, you've got 2 evidence and then 2 4Cs. That gets you your 4 sort of analysis and evidence points. All right. And then your last paragraph, piece 6, is a unique thing to me. And that is the past shapes future paragraph. I want my students to identify and explain how the topic that we're writing about is demonstrated later on in A-Push with another topic. So you're sort of comparing and contrasting while laying out an argument for how whatever the theme of the topic that you're writing about, it comes up again in A-Push in a later era. So it's sort of bookending from the Star Wars scroll to now the end credits scroll, where you sort of have 10 years later and there's a montage of characters and what they were doing later in their life, or they give you that like update at the end of a movie or a TV series, whatever. You kind of get the picture, right? We're starting with the scroll and we're ending with where are they now? How is this going to move forward down the road? It's a perfect bookend for nailing your LEQ. So this is really how I recommend we dominate the LEQ. We got 6 paragraphs. We got 6 points in there. You kind of can feel that theme of 6 permeating through the lesson here. No matter what, you got to check with your teachers. And for my guys, we got to work together in class to ensure that we're advancing and showing that we're College Board AP level writers. But that's pretty much how I would recommend you guys attack and then dominate the LEQ. I'll be producing more of these videos on writing workshops later in the year. So please make sure to subscribe or share these with other friends if you wish. But for now, I'm going to get ready to gear up to watch Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and the daunting Jets defense make that Red Sea stay pretty calm today. So as always, I'll end these with reminding you that the past shapes the future. Take care, Air Push Nation, and have a great Sunday afternoon. And good luck working on your essays.